with Ashanti, it is a delicate situation. She is a big part of Murder Inc. The fans want that. Everybody wants that. It's weird. Just how I have my version of what has happened with me and Ashanti, she has her version.
And I have my version.
We were still married, but we were separated when they were dating. I was used to it from the beginning, like him going and traveling. I just wasn't used to the women. That was like new, like, where did these hoes come from?
Let's talk about Irv Gotti, the music mogul behind Murder Inc., because this man just can't seem to let Ashanti go. It's been over a decade, but every time he gets a chance to speak, he somehow brings her up. It's like he's stuck in the past, constantly bringing up their history, even though Ashanti has clearly moved on. While Irv was busy reminiscing about the good old days, his wife, Deb Lorenzo, was dealing with the real fallout of his so-called affair. Now, after all these years, Deb is finally breaking her silence and telling her side of the story. Let's rewind a bit. Back in 2007, Irv gave us a glimpse into the mess that was his marriage. We saw Deb trying to hold everything together while Irv, on the other hand, was out playing boss at Murder Inc. and running around with different women like it was his second job. But here's where things got even worse. It wasn't just the women that pushed Deb to her breaking point, it was Ashanti. Irv wasn't just stepping out on his wife, he was obsessed. It wasn't a simple fling, it was much deeper than that. If Ashanti was just a casual side piece, why would Irv still be talking about her all these years later? What was really going on? Was it love, or was he just caught up in his own delusions?
You wanted people to forgive you when you do stuff?
Don't talk about the cheat. I'm a good chip off the old block, aside from the infidelity. You know, in my crazy mind, I thought that was life. This is my wife, this is my family, but this bitch is here to suck my
I don't want to hear that. I literally don't want to hear.
Deb has a lot to say about it, and to understand how messy things got, we need to go back to the beginning, when Irv and Deb were still married. The two tied the knot in 2003. Deb already knew what she was signing up for. Irv was a busy man, and running a major label like Murder Inc. meant late nights, constant travel, and being surrounded by artists. But what Deb didn't expect was the constant stream of women that Irv brought into their marriage. It was like there was an open-door policy for infidelity. Deb wasn't blind. She knew what Irv was up to, but she tried to make it work for the sake of their family. She admitted that she put up with a lot, but things really started to change when Ashanti came into the picture. Irv's obsession with Ashanti pushed things over the edge. At first, it seemed like just another one of Irv's flings, but it quickly became clear that it was much more. Irv wasn't just sneaking around, he was making it obvious. Public appearances and interviews would often feature Irv gushing about Ashanti, her talent, her beauty, everything about her. Meanwhile, Deb was at home, watching her husband act like a groupie for another woman. Let's not forget that Murder Inc. was also in the middle of a federal investigation at the time, and the label was fighting for its survival.
You get tired of just when you just get tired of being tired, like, and really, no one can tell you when it's time to leave. Like, you just know you get tired of being tired, and that was me. I was just like, I can't do this.
But instead of focusing on his company or his family, Irv spent more time obsessing over Ashanti. When Ashanti joined Murder Inc., she quickly became the label's biggest star. Hits kept coming, and Irv wasn't just her producer, he was acting like her biggest fan. He constantly hyped her up, both personally and professionally. People in the industry started to notice how much extra attention he was giving her, and let's be honest, it wasn't just about business. Producers and artists working closely together isn't unusual, but Irv's behavior went beyond that. He was talking about Ashanti non-stop. Deb was watching all of this unfold while trying to hold their family together, but it was clear things weren't the same anymore.
Struggle with my identity, like, who am I gonna be if I'm not his wife? Because that's what everyone knew me as, his wife. So I'm not Irv Gotti's wife, I'm just Debbie. Am I okay with that? I wasn't okay with that. So I struggled a long time. I went back and forth, like I'm not enough just being Debbie. Like, I don't have that title, and and people are not gonna associate me. I'm not gonna mean anything anymore.
Even as the years passed and Ashanti moved on, Irv didn't let up. He was still talking about her, still bringing up their so-called situationship in every interview. He even went as far as talking about how he felt heartbroken when he found out she was dating Nelly. This was all while he was still married to Deb. It reached a point where Ashanti had to distance herself from the situation completely. She didn't want to get involved in Irv's delusions. Whenever she did speak about him, she made it clear that whatever Irv thought they had was not the reality he was making it out to be.
When you've been with someone who's taking care of you and your whole identity is in them, and so now you're going off on your own. So many people don't do that. So many people don't do that. You get so caught up in, and I've had people tell me, oh, just stay. Like, why don't you just stay? Like, let him do his thing, you do your thing, and I'm like, no. Like, I just couldn't. I can't. I can't. I can't live this double life. I just can't do it. And I was like, it's not for me.
So, was it really just a fling? Or was Irv living in a fantasy world? Deb has plenty to say about that. Deb tried to hold things together for a long time, not just for herself, but for their kids. She knew that being married to someone like Irv, a high-profile music mogul, came with its own set of challenges. The temptations of the industry were a reality, but what she didn't expect was her husband humiliating her in front of the world. Irv would come home on weekends, playing the part of the family man just enough to make Deb believe things could be fixed. She tried to make it work, but it was hard when Irv was out here giving interviews about Ashanti like his wife didn't even exist. At one point, Deb admitted she wanted to believe things could go back to how they were before Ashanti entered the picture. But the truth was, there was no going back. Irv was too deep in his own fantasy world, living out this rock star lifestyle while treating his wife as an afterthought. The real breaking point came when Irv started taking his frustrations out on his family. As things fell apart with Ashanti, Irv became even more distant, more erratic, and instead of handling his emotions like an adult, he projected his anger and disappointment onto the people who had been loyal to him the whole time. Deb had enough. The late nights, the disrespect, the public humiliation, it was all too much. Eventually, she did what Irv never thought she would do, she left. And honestly, that should have been the end of it. But no, Irv still wasn't done. He couldn't let go of the past. Even after the divorce, even after Ashanti moved on, and even after years of no one caring about his obsessive behavior, Irv still couldn't stop talking about her. Most people move on after a breakup, especially one that happened years ago. But Irv? He seemed to be stuck in the past. He did countless interviews, podcasts, and even documentaries where he brought up Ashanti like it happened yesterday. One of the most ridiculous moments came during an interview on Drink Champs, where he talked about how heartbroken he was when he found out Ashanti was dating Nelly. Keep in mind, this wasn't a passing comment, it was a deep dive into his feelings, acting like he was the victim, as if he wasn't still married to Deb at the time. What's worse is that Irv constantly claimed he was the genius behind Ashanti's career. He made all these wild claims about their time together, acting like she wouldn't have been successful without him. But let's be honest, Ashanti had the talent. Irv was just the one who got to benefit from it. Meanwhile, Ashanti never acknowledged him. She stayed quiet, kept her head high, and focused on her own career. She refused to give Irv the reaction he was so desperately seeking. At the end of the day, Irv tried to rewrite history, but all he really proved was that he never got over Ashanti. His biggest mistake wasn't losing her, it was never realizing he never truly had her in the first place. After years of enduring Irv's disrespect, the humiliation, and the constant drama, Deb finally chose herself. She packed up, walked away, and never looked back. Honestly, it was long overdue. Deb admitted that fear had kept her in the marriage longer than she should have stayed. She was afraid of what life would be like without Irv, afraid of breaking up her family, and afraid of starting over after years of standing in her husband's shadow. But once she stepped away, she realized the truth: she was never Irv's priority. He wanted it all. He wanted to play family man on the weekends while running around with Ashanti during the week. He wanted Deb to stay at home, loyal and quiet, while he paraded his obsession with Ashanti in front of the world. But Deb wasn't willing to do that anymore. She realized that her peace, her dignity, and her self-worth were more important than holding on to a marriage where she was nothing more than a background character in her own life. And here's the kicker: while Deb was finally moving forward, Irv was still stuck in the past. Even after the divorce, after Ashanti distanced herself completely, and after everyone had moved on, Irv still couldn't stop talking about her. It was almost pathetic at this point. Everyone had moved on. Deb was living her best life, Ashanti was thriving, but Irv was still sitting in interviews talking about how he lost the love of his life. The internet had a field day with this. Fans wasted no time dragging Irv for being more emotional over Ashanti than over losing his own family. Some pointed out that Ashanti had long moved on, while Irv was acting like she broke his heart just yesterday. Others couldn't believe how Irv was embarrassing his wife, losing his family, and still focusing on his obsession with Ashanti. People began to point out the obvious: Ashanti never acknowledged Irv in the way he wanted. She never entertained his stories, never gave him the reaction he was so desperate for, and just focused on her own career. In the end, Irv kept reliving the past like it was a show he couldn't stop watching. But the truth was clear: he wasn't stuck in love, he was stuck in a fantasy. And now, the world has seen it all for what it is. What do you think? Was Irv truly in love with Ashanti, or was he just obsessed with a fantasy he created in his mind? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe, because we'll be keeping you updated on all the latest tea.